So hi, I'm Max. I'll be talking about language revitalization, music, and hip-hop. I'm a huge fan of hip-hop, and I notice there's always something more powerful to hip-hop when there's a message. There's definitely such thing as a commercial hip-hop compared to a political hip-hop. And one of the ways you'll see political hip-hop manifest is in indigenous communities rapping to revitalize their language. Hip-hop celebrates marginalized cultures. Think about where it started, New York, oppressed people of color. Indigenous people are able to relate to this, specifically fighting against stereotypes and losing their own language. So they are able to assume a hip-hop identity. And not only this, it's because there's this idea that hip-hop can't be owned. And that has started a global hip-hop movement. In this article that explores Mayan hip-hop, there's a few benefits for rapping your music. Primarily, by assuming this identity, you can actually build a community. There are hip-hop classes, breakdancing, and additional language classes that will complement your rapping as well. Music brings a scattered community together. Also, hip-hop might reach a more youthful demographic as well. Songs can promote language maintenance. In order to rap a song, people might have to translate their own language, as well as just having to use words that might not have seen use in a long time. Songs can also tell stories. Stories told in rap songs are heard by a potentially larger demographic. They can also be political, or it can be a traditional story. Even if people aren't learning a language, they can learn about culture through rap. Many experts agree that cultural revitalization is one and the same as language revitalization, and learning stories is a great form of cultural revitalization. Hip-hop is also able to challenge stereotypes as well as ethnic identity, what we consider ourselves, and what kind of frustrations we are dealing with in a modern society. Hip-hop might also help with compartmentalization, which is this whole idea that a language might only be spoken in one domain. Maybe it's your house, and then it's all you speak your language in. And so now you have a way to sing your language that's beyond traditional music as well. So I did a quick comparison between hip-hop and traditional music, and I realized the two most important things to look at here is really that hip-hop comes from a place of fighting for civil rights, whereas traditional music might have sacred elements which are important to maintaining culture. Ideally, you want to increase the domains of speech. This would mean having traditional music as well as hip-hop. But what about other kinds of music, other domains? What about a tribe called Red?
Aaron and I worked in a club that was just down the street from here. I was bouncing at the time.
A Tribe Called Red is not hip-hop. It is including hip-hop elements, but it is mostly dance music. It is club music. It was played at nightclubs. It was meant for people to dance to, specifically indigenous people. And so you are creating another domain for people to talk in.
By a lot of people that attended that party and were like, you can't stop this. We just wanted to throw a party. That's it. And it turned out that throwing a party for indigenous people in an urban setting is a huge political statement.
While they might not focus so much about any one language, they are contributing to cultural revitalization. They aren't just making a community for indigenous people to gather, but a multicultural community. This might include their album, The Hallucination. They are creating a community across the globe to revitalize their culture. I think it's interesting that they have created a safe place for indigenous and white people to dance to indigenous music. And of course, while they play their music, they are breaking stereotypes. One of the ways they'll break stereotypes is by reappropriating certain images. This might be from film or cartoons, something that is greatly out of proportion, and then they'll actually juxtaposition it with images of themselves or just real indigenous people. And the whole point is just to give people who are maybe not indigenous a different perspective, go through a different lens of how ridiculous some of these stereotypes can be. On the topic of stereotypes and misconceptions, one of the most commonly encountered ones was actually about dialects. A lot of people consider languages, specifically in Mexico, to be dialects instead of full languages, and this is quite a common misconception I found. On the topic of language dialects, I'd like to show off the following lines from Barrett's paper. Mayan rapper Tezutsu, in an effort to keep it real, writes his lyrics using 3 different Mayan languages from his language contact zone while writing his songs. As a result, language communities who are further from his language contact zone might mistake the other languages for different dialects. Dialect thinking is very much a Western ideology that can be changed by hip-hop. Tezutsu further mentions how he wants to create a mutually intelligible variety of his language so that more people can understand. He has plans to create orthography that many different language communities near his language contact zone can read. This would increase the language's status and build a Mayan community of speech. Alright, now I'm going to talk about some of the negative implications hip-hop has in concern to language revitalization. So one of the first concerns is about respect. A tribe called Red had concerns from elders for how the word powwow was being used in a dance club where alcohol was served. A powwow is where ancestors and youth are supposed to dance and communicate at. I'm greatly summarizing this, but a tribe called Red believes they are pushing the boundaries of this word use in their song Electric Powwow, and so they are making sure they are respectful. And one of the ways they do this is by not sampling any music or chants from sacred traditional songs. This is also true for Mayan rappers who teach respect for their ancestors and their hip-hop communities. There's also this concern of hip-hop changing the culture, and yes, it can bring identity shift and standardization, or even westernization, somewhat. It doesn't necessarily mean that hip-hop will replace the culture or whatever language's traditional music existed. Sometimes the traditional music and hip-hop might merge, such as Kwaito. Kwaito is a language from South Africa that borrows many aspects from hip-hop, house music, and traditional music. It is often considered a variation of American house music, but this is a misconception. It draws very much from traditional South African music, with some samples of house music and other Western musics. The people developed Kwaito as a type of music featuring their own languages, which then fueled their economy. Lastly, indigenous people might associate hip-hop with gang activity. From the book Hip-Hop Beats Indigenous Rhymes, the author, Mays, finds himself talking with an elder who associates hip-hop with urban gang activity in reservations. Mays continues, saying this belief that urban settings are bad for youth continues in scholarly articles. I quote, "An urban context can have a negative influence on Native American youth. Deviant peer norms in a city lifestyle can promote high-risk behavior and can be incompatible with cultural immersion found on reservations." The author basically believes this is an unfortunate belief, as hip-hop and indigenous people allows them to interact with their culture in an urban setting, when their elders might not even consider them to be real indigenous people, where they might become invisible. I definitely see a parallel from invisible indigenous people and how they might not be recognized, and how Mayans might not be perceived as real Mayans, because their culture has been perceived to long since been dead. As a Canadian who looks like this, I've only recently discovered from my family that my ancestors spoke a Zapoteca language, but we have no idea which language we used to speak. As a result, I don't really consider myself a Zapoteca indigenous person because I live in urban Canada, but I am able to listen to Juchirap, a Zapoteca hip-hop band, and strangely enough, I can really enjoy listening to it.